This week, we're learning about seeds. Seeds are produced by the fruit of a plant. And you may think of this as a vegetable, but a butternut squash is actually a fruit. And inside that butternut squash, there are so many seeds. And when the squash ripens, the seeds drop to the ground and they start to grow a new squash plant. This is a really fun story about an imaginary friend that Sophie discovered at the farmer's market. One bright fall day, Sophie chose a squash at the farmer's market. Her parents had planned to serve it for supper, but Sophie had other ideas. It was just the right size to hold in her arms, just the right size to bounce on her knee, just the right size to love. "I'm glad we met," said Sophie. Good friends are hard to find. When it was time for supper, Sophie's mother looked at the squash and she looked at Sophie. "I call her Bernice," said Sophie. "Oh, I'll call for pizza," said her mother. After that, Bernice went everywhere with Sophie. Story time at the library, to visit other squash at the farmer's market, and to practice rolling down the hill at the garden. Every night, Sophie gave Bernice a bottle and a hug and a kiss. "Well, we did hope she would love vegetables," said Sophie's mother. "Shh," said Sophie. "Bernice is sleeping." "Sweet pea," Sophie's mother said one morning. "Bernice is a squash, not a friend. If we don't eat her soon, she'll get mushy and gross. Let's bake her with some marshmallows," she said. "Don't listen, Bernice," Sophie cried. That afternoon, Sophie's father took her shopping. "Sophie," he said, "don't you want to pick a nice toy to play with?" But the trucks were too hard and the dolls were too soft. Sophie clutched Bernice tightly. "No thanks," she said. "I have everything I need." After supper, Sophie's parents called a family meeting. "Why don't we donate Bernice to the food pantry before she rots?" her father suggested. Sophie shook her head. "Oh no, Bernice will last forever." "Bernice seems a little blotchy," said Sophie's dad on the way to the library one day. "She looks perfect to me," Sophie replied. Still, as winter neared, Sophie noticed changes. Bernice seemed softer, and after her somersaults, she lacked her usual style. At home, the next night, Sophie cleared leaves from Bernice's favorite spot, made a bed of soft soil, tucked Bernice in, and kissed her goodnight. "I hope you'll feel better," she whispered. "Get better soon." That night, while Sophie slept, the wind whistled and tiny snowflakes fell on the ground where Bernice was resting in the soil. When she awoke, the world was covered with white. Do you think Bernice is cold out there? Sophie asked her mother. Oh, I'm sure she's warm and cozy under her snow blanket, her mother said. Sophie gazed out the window. When the snow finally melted the following spring, Sophie rushed to the garden. The only thing there was a small green sprout in the garden. It looked strangely familiar. How was your winter? She asked Bernice. After that, Sophie, Ace, and Bernice ate lunch together every day in the garden, and Bernice continued to grow. One day, Bernice had grown 2 tiny squash. Wow, Sophie told them. You look just like your mom. And soon, little Bonnie and Baxter were just the right size for Sophie to hold in her arms and bounce on her knees. Just the right size to love. The end.